But right now I'd like to introduce Dr. Kristen Harmon, who's a senior lecturer in history at the University of Tasmania and the course coordinator for the Diploma of Family History.
Thank you, Katie. It's a real pleasure to be here at the start of National Family History Month to introduce you to our Diploma of Family History. So this is a relatively new and exciting initiative, I think, from the University of Tasmania. As you'll know, I'm sure, there's trillions of documents online that you can look at relating to family history. And so we've introduced this course, which is also online, to help guide you through that sea of information so that we help you make sense of it and to find information relevant to your own family. There's lots of reasons why people decide they want to study family history. Some of our students have been studying family history themselves for many years. Some are very new to it. Some are very young. Others are relatively old. Some people have studied up to year 10, and we've even had retired professors, doctors, lawyers, and people that may not have studied for 30 or 40 years and people that have recently studied. So we aim to be applicable and accessible to everyone with an interest in family history. Obviously, one of the key reasons people want to engage is to find out a lot more about their family's background. And I can tell you there's been some wonderfully juicy tales emerge. I really love marking the work that students hand in at the end of these units. And it's given me massive insights into the lives of usually relatively ordinary, everyday people that we might not otherwise get to think a lot about. Through the diploma, people have also formed a lot of connections. So while it is fully online, I've found that groups have formed around Australia where people meet up. They might decide to have a lunch club, or they have coffee together and they share their learning experience. That's not compulsory, and not everybody likes to do that. But I've been really happy to see the sense of community forming for those who are looking for it. Another thing to come out of the diploma, I'll tell you a little bit more about it as we get through to look at the individual subjects, is that people are creating items that are becoming legacies. For example, I've seen people embroider beautiful quilted wall hangings about the places of importance to their ancestors in the past. You don't all have to take up quilting to do the diploma. There's also, of course, a lot of written documents produced and other things of real value. Now, the diploma can be joined at almost any time of the year. We have a special website at the university that shows you which units are coming up soon. Some people decide to start in one place and some start in another. On Monday, actually, we have Introduction to Family History starting. So that is a recommended starting point for people, and that starts really soon. Most people finish within 1 to 2 years. So you do units one after another, sometimes with some overlap. But sometimes people take a break. I've noticed people like to go on cruises, or they might have to go interstate. Perhaps there's a new child coming into the family or some other reason to travel. So people can opt to have a break. Each unit's applied for, not just the whole course in one go. So in the Diploma of Family History, students do 4 units at what we call foundation level, and Introduction to Family History is one of those. We actually offer 5 units at that level to give people some choice. People like to choose. People don't always just want to be told that they have to be constrained to certain things. So Introduction to Family History leads you on into other units, so writing about your family history. And I've been intrigued to find that students on the whole choose to write a fictional account. So they draw on their ancestors' experiences, but they want to write about it in a way that is slightly fictionalised. Some students opt to write non-fiction, so there's choice there. It shocked some of my colleagues that are very dyed-in-the-wool historians that anyone would write fiction about their family, but this happens. Being in Tasmania, and in fact Australia more generally, we have units dedicated to the history of our convict ancestors. And so that has a strong focus on Tasmania. Because of the richness of the archival material here, we also pay attention to New South Wales and Western Australia and Norfolk Island. Their records are good, but not as comprehensive as our ones here. We're very lucky in that regard. We have other units that deal with the idea of telling a family story through a series of photographs as a narrative. So that's called the photo essay, and that's what that's all about. And also a unit that looks at special photos and objects and places in a family. How do you tell what decade that photo could have been taken in? Or what do you do with this object? How do you look after it? How do you write a biography of it so that when you leave it to your descendants, they understand about that object? We also have units at 100 level or first year to choose from, and that extends the writing into looking at intergenerational story. We have a more advanced convict unit. A lot of students love getting involved with oral history. You don't have to always interview someone older than yourself. Some people are at the top tier of their generations. You can interview sideways to cousins and other relatives, or descendants, or other people that might have known your family. We also have a unit focused on how to research your military ancestors. It's got a particular focus on World War I because, again, the wealth of records that have become available about World War I. We're not concerned only with the men who went to fight. Of course we're concerned with them, but also nurses or the families at home. Try to capture that whole experience. So part of what we do in helping you look at records and look at your ancestors is we want to show you how to get a real sense of the time and place they inhabited. So it's not solely about filling in boxes on a family tree, it's about bringing that experience to life and trying to understand more about what that might be. I want to give you a sneak peek of what it might look like to do one of our online units. So Introduction to Family History, that starts next week, has a range of content. Now I'm going to have to ask you to commit an active imagination and think of this as flowing down one page. Because of the screen I've had to cut it in half, but this is part of what we call a chapter. So we have 6 modules, they last about a week each, and each module, if you like, or each week's divided into chapters. English decided on that title, and I quite liked it, so we call them chapters across our units. And what you'll find in our chapters is we start off by talking about what you can expect to learn. We have some video lectures, and they're in the style of a YouTube clip. They last on average around 8 to 15 minutes, it can vary. We have a transcript. Some students prefer to download a transcript. Some students may have hearing issues, they may have in parts of Tasmania or elsewhere on the mainland internet connectivity issues. We have information, we have suggestions, and we have reading materials. And here's part of the next module. I'm not the only person you see in the YouTube video lectures. We have a range of specialists talking about their areas of expertise. So archives officers, historians, and so forth. So you will see other people. We have online activities as well to test your own knowledge. So games, if you like, where you can use your mouse to click, drag and do things to check how you're going. And we also have the possibility of joining into group discussions. So we have online boards where you can post questions to me and the rest of the teaching team. We have online boards where you can simply chat with each other. But we also have smaller groups, and they're completely optional. Not everybody likes to join a discussion group. Some people love it and they enjoy having that sense of engagement. The University of Tasmania offers Australia's only really dedicated, fully online diploma of family history. Some universities offer a wider thing around local, regional and family history, but our units have been created to be very bespoke. They've been crafted specifically to the needs of people with an interest in family history. So we're very interested in feedback. We incorporate new materials. We had questions, for example, about the use of DNA. So last year, Ros Escott, who some of you might know, she's a pretty prominent family historian, kindly recorded a lecture with us about the use of DNA in family history, for example. So we're always looking at what people want to learn more about, and we're incorporating that. As part of being a student with the University of Tasmania, there's free access to Ancestry Library. So Ancestry Library is where you can access all of those ancestry records to look things up. It doesn't enable you to build an online family tree in it. It just gives you the access to the many military, civil, convict records. There's a wealth of information on there. I'd also add that Find My Past is tremendous. And as a member of this library, you can actually come and book time, and you've got free access to Find My Past here. And that's another great resource. We have an official Facebook page for the Diploma of Family History, which we're live streaming to at the moment, and which you're welcome to like the page and follow our news and events and learn about what's coming up in terms of our units. Students themselves too have actually formed their own closed Facebook groups that when people enrol in a unit, they can ask to join those groups. And they're populated by people that have already done the units or people currently doing those units. So it's not a thing staff are involved in, but a lot of people have found that to be another useful community of engagement and support for their learning journey. We also have a fabulous contact team. So whenever people have questions about their enrolment or about using the online learning tools we have, or perhaps I've forgotten the due date of some work, our contact team's just a phone call or email away, and they will get back to you very quickly, or they will talk to you immediately if they're not already taken up with other calls. But you don't have to just take my word for how wonderful it is. I've actually got some testimonials from students. We've got lots of wonderful feedback, and you'll see that students talk about how we're not boring to listen to, which is really wonderful as a lecturer to hear. We do not want to bore our students. We've also found that people that have already done a lot of family history research have been sometimes surprised at the extra tips they've gained or insights they've had into different ways of approaching documents and other materials. The instructions we aim to make as clear as possible. So those glimpses I gave you of the units, you might have noticed we have icons. So you see a book that's a reading or a headset with something to listen to. We try to make it as visually appealing and as obvious as possible what needs to be done at any given moment. And we've been really delighted to find that people have said they've learned a lot. And last year, in fact, it was fantastic to see the first of our graduates walk across and shake hands with the Chancellor and receive their Diploma of Family History. And I got to go up to Sydney to a ceremony we had there as well, and to witness that wonderful occasion. Some of our students have actually gone on to write and publish books. So some of our writing students have done that collectively, and other individual students have gone on to create books about particular aspects of their family history they've discovered as part of this learning process. It's been really interesting. Some people doing the diploma are already involved in libraries or tourism ventures or other areas of relevance, but we have had some students start consultancies. I've had a student up in Queensland who's picked up an additional job on the weekends. She works at her local library as an advisor to people coming in wanting to research their family history. And of course a lot of people engage in this simply to leave that legacy for descendants, or perhaps just to satisfy themselves over certain aspects of their family history that interests them. We're always really keen to hear more about people's exciting discoveries, and at the moment we have a fabulous competition that's only just started, Shaking the Family Tree. And there's some great prizes, And if anyone's interested in entering, we've got a few flyers on the table, but you can also look on our website for more details. You've actually got till the end of National Family History Month, so you've got till the end of August if you're keen to do that. I'm going to hand over shortly to one of our wonderful graduates, Caroline Hay, who's going to talk about her experiences. But before I do so, I'll just mention that we have several wonderful people from the contact team with us in the room who, when the presentations have ended, are more than happy, as I am, to answer any questions you might have. And we have some materials that you're welcome to help yourselves to as well. So at this point, I'll invite Caroline, who is one of a number of our STAR graduates, to come and speak with you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Kristen. I enrolled in the very first unit in the beginning of 2016, but I graduated in the second lot because I did take some time off to go to the UK and do some family history research, and in between. So there is that flexibility, as Kristen has referred to, of being able to sort of take the course over a little bit longer if you wish. I would say when I enrolled, I didn't necessarily have any particular expectation about what was going to come, but I think there's two aspects to it. One is the actual course information and the skills that you were going through doing it. That's just fabulous. But the other side is the unexpected consequences, the stuff that Kristen spoke about with the Facebook groups, which has really been quite surprising, and it's continuing on. Because I'm graduated, I'm no longer in any of the individual subject units. I've withdrawn from those, but I am in an alumni Facebook group, and that is active, you know, every single hour of the day, pretty much. And people have really formed a community in a way that, you know, I mean, I've studied in 3 different states. I've never come across this kind of connection between people before, and I think it's because people who do family history are really interested in it and love sharing their stories. And it works wonderfully. I'm not very good at transcribing documents. I've got better, but I'm still not great. And there are some people who are real experts in it. So I might, you know, post something saying, "Can someone tell me, well, what does this occupation say?" And then, you know, you get that bit of information back that helps you to make sense of someone's story. So it's these two sides: the unexpected side of the networks that are created through all the different students, plus the subjects themselves. I would really recommend that everyone start with the Introduction to Family History unit if they can. I know this next one's starting very soon, next Monday. But I think it's a really good overview about the standard that the university is expecting, but also it's about putting in places good practice. And for many of us who might have been doing research over a number of years, you do have, you know, bad habits creep in to how you might go about doing this study. And this unit really gives you some very clear ideas about how you should be referencing your documents and sourcing all your information and recording information and recording when you've looked up something but then found you haven't got it, and to stop you going back 2 years later looking for the same item in the same place. Those kinds of habits that we need to develop to be effective researchers is one of the items that you'll get out of that. I did my, I mean, it's probably changed the assessment since when I did it, but I did my research into a great-grandfather who the family story is he's a convict. I have no proof of that. I only have his marriage document and his death document 2 years later. There's nothing to confirm that he is this convict, but allegedly in the family. So I did my research about him, and it wasn't actually researching him. It was finding out, the assignment was to find out what is out there. What were my sources of information that I could use to try and find out whether or not this person was in fact a convict. And a huge benefit of this course for me has been engaging with resources here at the library and within the archives. Because I vaguely knew what was here, I looked up a few things, but I mostly worked online. The Tasmanian Names Index was my main reference point. But through the course, I found myself coming in here, actually looking at documents within the archives and getting a lot more familiar with the resources in the family history section that are out in the library itself. And it made me, in order to actually put a plan in place for this man, I had to actually find out a lot more things that were out there than I knew of. And there is so much information, just so much. It's just overwhelming at times. But I have a lot more confidence now in my ability to know where to go and to find the information much more quickly than when I started the course. I've actually volunteered subsequently to finishing the diploma with the Friends of the Orphan School based out of Newtown. And I wouldn't have had the confidence to put my hand up and say, hey, actually, I'd like to do some research for you. And it's been wonderful, and that's been a direct benefit for me from having completed the course. I feel like I know where to go to look for information now, much more effectively than before. A lot of people really enjoyed the writing units. They were very, very popular, and as Kristen said, a surprising number. I'm in the non-fiction group, but loads of people wanted to do fiction writing and got a lot out of those units. I'm more of a researcher, and I particularly enjoyed the Convict Ancestors unit and the Families at War unit. Now, the Convict Ancestors unit is run by Kristen and by Professor Hamish Maxwell-Stewart, who's done a lot of the videos for the unit. And we're really lucky to have world-leading academics contributing to the content of the course. And if you are Tasmanian and you have that convict history, it's a real plus to have that kind of knowledge. The Families at War unit, I came to that with absolutely no understanding, no knowledge at all, no experience of ever looking at military records. And I found it really, really very interesting and really valuable. And there's a wealth of information provided in that unit about what is out there in order to explore military records. And I didn't have anyone directly in my family. My grandfather did sign up, but he was too young. He was never sent to war. So I decided to do one of his brothers. And my family had lost all contact with descendants of this person. So I actually went on Ancestry, found some family trees, tracked down his great-great-granddaughter, who lives in Boston now, and contacted her and said, do you mind if I research your great-grandfather, who was my grandfather's brother? She said, please do, that would be wonderful. And she said, oh, by the way, I've got postcards he sent his wife. And all these other things that were, photographs of him from his pension card that he got from being a veteran. And it just completely fleshed out the story in a way that I wouldn't have done. And it was really moving. We did that unit over the Anzac period, and I think everyone actually found it very, very emotional when we got right into these records. And yeah, I really, really enjoyed that unit as well. Place, image, object scared me because I'm not creative, and I'm like, oh, where are we going? And the quilt was the highlight. I remember this quilt, it was absolutely stunning. I did this rather pathetic little thing on a piece of cardboard that looked like a primary school student had done it, but that was, it met the criteria. But it was I enjoyed the unit a lot because it forced us to look at things in our past that were important to us. And although I was born in Tasmania, I grew up in Sydney, and the place I chose to study was my grandfather's shack, which is at Pike Clay Lagoon in Cremorne. And to me, that always equated with Tasmania. Whenever we'd come down for a holiday, that's where we went. And that my childhood feelings of Tasmania were definitely around that shack. So that made me talk to my mother. I got a bit about the history. I learned a lot about the fact that my parents had lived in it while they were married, while their house was being built, all sorts of things that I didn't know. But by having to engage with it, I learned a lot about it. And from the object side, I'm custodian of a chiffonier, piece of furniture that belonged to my great-great-grandmother. So I researched about its history, where it was made, what it was made from. I like the unit a lot because it forced us to look at those things around us, those family heirlooms that we might have, and actually to find out their story and put them in some kind of context. And again, with oral history, I would say it doesn't matter if you don't have anyone within your family to talk to. There are definitely people who spoke to their own children about their different memories of childhood and or neighbours. I spoke to my mother, who was born in 1936, about her memories of World War II. And she had this very strong recollection of the Japanese plane that flew over the river in 1942 on a reconnaissance flight, and that was really powerful. And it was very interesting because my father's the same age and he had no memory of it at all. But my mother was definitely affected by it, and it was a wonderful thing to sort of engage with her, but also just to develop the skills. I've now got an app on my phone that I downloaded for that course for recording, and I've used it for so many other things. It's been really worthwhile. When I went to the UK in the middle of the course, I asked if I could record some of the talks I did when I was wandering around Edinburgh Castle and things like that, and I've got them all recorded. And so it's the real gain in skill across a whole lot of areas. And I would say there was definitely anxiety amongst a lot of the older people who were going to originally apply for the course, whether or not they could do the assignments and whether they had the computer skills to do it. And there's lots of support from within the university itself, but also from the other students. And I would say almost everyone would have got through, you know, successfully. And it's understandable that people are anxious, particularly the people who haven't, you know, who left school at 14 and who are now in their 70s, you know, wanting to do this, but they all got through it. And the sense of achievement at graduation was palpable for loads and loads of people. It's been a really positive experience. How are we going for time? Okay. Yeah, I was going to say if anyone had any questions they might like to ask.